I'm Dr. Scott Lyons, and you're watching or listening to The Gently Used Human. Have you ever watched an animal documentary and found your senses perking up as the narrator perversely describes the mating rituals of said mammals, fish, amphibians, reptiles, and birds? You're thinking to yourself, should I look away, or should I lean into the dirty, nerdy thirst traps of the natural world? And what if a hula-hooping genius was narrating those fascinating tidbits of evolutionary biology? Well, in this episode, I speak with Perrin Ireland, a hula-hooping animal storyteller, as we explore the incredibly fascinating diversity of sex in the natural world. We cover the range from afterglow cuddling to post-coital eating of their mates. We unpack what we can learn from the intimate interactions of the animal kingdom and recognize the projected stories we have created as to why animals sensually relate. This takes us all the way down the rabbit hole of the rigidity of science and what it takes to update old paradigms. Trigger warning, not all animal interactions are consensual, and we address that here as well. So get your hula hoops and join us in this hip-thrusting and mind-blowing episode. Perrin Ireland has spent the last decade exploring how animals make a living, how they make noise, have sex, and try to kill each other using language, line, and color to communicate the shocking realities of life on this planet. Her work is a collaboration with the natural world, scientists, and the viewer, whose engagement informs her visual and performance research. She has built an art practice inside scientific and policy institutions, telling stories situated between what we know about the planet and our belonging to it. She began by illustrating a marine biology's lab research at Brown University while earning a science degree. From 2012 to 2022, she created watercolor animated videos about climate change, oceans, and endangered animals at the Natural Resource Defense Council. Her work has appeared at many museums and scientific institutions. Find her recent work on Instagram. The Thirsty Science weekly email newsletter is a great way to stay up to date on the latest animal drama she draws. So get your hula hoops and join us in this hip-thrusting and mind-blowing episode. Welcome to The Gently Used Human, everyone, and welcome to my dear, sweet, amazing guest, Perrin. I just want to say you are the queen of thirst traps of science, and I just want to hang out with you all day and nerd out. So I'm hoping we can do that today. But I also want to say that I love the fact that you are a multitasker to the extreme situation where you are sharing the most curious facts about animals and jazzercising with a hula hoop at the exact same time, and I live for it.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me. It's very fun to be here. I'm excited.
I am so excited. Can you tell us first, because I think the hula hoop is just, it was a brilliant ad. First of all, everything you say, I would go to a museum for in all your videos on social media. But the fact that you added the hula hoop, I don't know, it adds a layer of brilliance that it just excites me to the oomph degree. So where did the hula hoop come in and sharing all these amazing facts about animals? And
I think, honestly, so many of my best creative ideas have started as accidents, and or just these sort of spur of the moment, let's try this thing. And I tend to be a little suspicious of people that will tell you otherwise, but so much of my work is such a collaboration. So really, I posted a hula hoop video where I was talking about, I had just learned that octopus dream, and that that scientists are learning that they dream because they are flashing the colors that they flash when they're awake. So when they're hunting, when they're afraid, whatever, I don't know the exact color correlation to emotion, but they're flashing those colors while they sleep. And so scientists have started deducing that they dream while they sleep, and they are having elaborate dreams, which might indicate a sense of self in abstraction, which we tend to limit our appreciation of other animals having that. So I posted this video where I just talked about that. I was listening to some music and I hula hooped, and I actually posted it to stories. And a friend of mine who's a performer and actor said, this needs to go to main grid. So I put it in the grid and people responded strongly. And I did this little joke. I did the hashtag then thirsty science because basically
Yeah.
I have been making stories about science for my whole career. And I wanted to see if I really thirst trapped it up for you. If I just did the thing that is so explicitly about getting you to look at me long enough that you'll listen, will you listen? And they were like, we will. So that's how it started, is just kind of pandemic boredom playing. And it
I
grew
love it.
into this
Could you
whole other
imagine
thing.
if our third grade science teachers just started fucking hula hooping every time they were talking about biology and deconstructing bonds and chemistry? Like, it would
I know.
work.
I know. Are you a fan of the Grease movies? The Grease franchise? Grease
No,
1
what
and
is
2.
that?
Grease?
Oh, Grease.
Grease Lightning?
Yeah.
Did you
Okay,
watch Grease
Grease
2?
I did.
Okay. I think Grease 2 is profoundly underrated. I am
Changed
at
my
Grease
mind.
2. Oh my God.
But do it while hula hooping.
I would love to. Maybe I'll make a special reel inspired by this podcast where I just talk Grease 2 because I love it. But they have this incredible song, Reproduction, where they take over a science class and they sing a really sexy song about plant reproduction. And when I was a kid, I remember thinking, if we could talk about how much sex is happening and how wild it is, this could be more fun. But it's this whole, I'll send you the song Reproduction after. They say, make my stamen go berserk.
Oh my God. Yes.
It's
Make my
hot.
statement go berserk.
It's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do you remember Bill Nye the Science Guy? Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I had the biggest crush on Bill Nye. I can't remember if I talked about it in a previous episode, but I had a friend who lived next to Bill Nye, and I would just stand outside and hope that he would see me so I could totally science flirt with him.
Incredible.
But making science fun, making it interesting, it is, and then making it a thirst trap. You just took it to a whole new level.
Well, it already is a thirst trap. I just capitalized on it.
You're right. I mean, the content that and we'll get deeply into that content for those who are listening, the content that you share and you narrate, it is a thirst trap. You're literally talking about the curious coupling and sex of animals and all the most interesting facts that, I mean, I just get so excited. I get overwhelmed in watching your videos. There are times when I have to just tell myself to go to bed because I keep I keep watching them. I keep binge watching them. And even in prepping for this podcast, I was like, where do we even begin? Is it with wombat poop or cockroach sex or I don't even know. There's just so many good stories and facts out there about that you're sharing.
I think being overwhelmed is an appropriate response. And for me, it's really about swooning and feeling, it makes me feel so grateful to be on this planet at this moment in a planet's evolutionary life. The idea that life is that creative really moves me. That there are all of these versions to solve the same problem. It feels to me like life force, life itself, evolution, whatever your philosophical orientation or spiritual orientation is to it, was basically like, hey, I'm going to show the fuck off. Oh, you thought that was cool? Watch this bit. She's just boom, bang, bang with every option that she comes up with. She outdoes herself. It's like she was in competition with herself to make the craziest possible ways for life to make more of itself. And that makes me feel a lot less lonely and really titillated and excited to be a sentient member of the Earth community right now. Especially at this moment in technology and science where we can watch these things better than ever. We have genetic advancements that allow us to understand it better than ever. What a cool time to be alive to learn all this.
Yeah, it truly is. To go back for the hula hoop for a moment before we get into the thirst traps of science itself. I wanted to, I don't remember if I've ever shared the story with you, that I, in second grade, won the third place in the hula hoop contest at my elementary school. And it is something that has stayed with me my entire life. And when I got my first office working as a therapist, and I put all my degrees up on the wall, and I also put that plaque on the wall that I got third place in the hula hoop contest in elementary school. And I mean, even now I laugh at the fact that I put that up next to a bunch of master's degrees and PhDs. You know?
But what an
gotta,
inviting thing for people coming into your office to be like, oh, I see where the priorities are here. I think I can get down with this guy.
The priorities are jazzercising with hula hoops.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I mean,
keeping
absolutely.
it like right and tight.
Did you ever think? Did you ever think of like alternatives like baton twirling, or like, you know, like are we evolving this into other forms of athletic entertainment?
Well, this is where I'm very much an elder millennial because my understanding, although I do not go there, is that on TikTok, doing all manner of activities in the home while you tell people stories. My understanding is Jessica Valenti, who's a feminist writer who's doing incredible abortion coverage through her newsletter. She does a feminist TikTok roundup every week, and she'll post videos where feminist TikTok, they'll do a whole makeup video and they'll be putting on their makeup while they explain to you new abortion restrictions. So I think there is really cool widespread use of the tool of like, I'm in my house and I'm eating this soup. There's an ASMR leg of it, I understand. And then there's, you're going to be with me while I cook this meal, but I'm talking to you about this other stuff. So I have wondered in other moments if there's something else I want to add to the mix while I tell people stories. And also people request a lot podcasts, actually, which I would do maybe just a little mini something, but where it's just my voice talking to them about, I don't know. So I don't know. Yeah, for now, it's a fun way for me to share little morsels as I research for my own book, which is illustrated, which is mostly how I identify as an illustrator. So it's these little physical jazzercise breaks from that. But yeah, maybe I got these things. I don't know if it's gonna, let me see. If you've seen these bala bangles.
Oh.
So this is true. Okay. So I'm a mouser-size bitch. Did you ever do that?
What's a mouser-size
Saturday
bitch?
Mornings, the Mickey Mouse Club. 6:30 in the morning, I would wake my father up on Saturdays and I would be like, let's go watch Mickey Mouse Club. He would go sit with me, bless his heart. And there was a segment called Mousercise, which was jazzercise for kids. That was, I lived for it. And then I started doing Saturday morning jazz class because I was in a jazz company. But these bala bangles you put on.
Are there weights? Like back in the 80s when we used to run with weights?
They're back. And they're chic. They're very millennial. This is millennial pink.
Oh, millennial pink is all the rage.
Yeah. So maybe I'll do something with those.
I feel like I should come visit you in Brooklyn and we should run with, we should just put them all over our body. The banglet will be like a banglet tribe.
That would be so fun. That would be so fun.
You know, oh my gosh, I did not watch the Mickey Mouse Club, but my last show when I was a performance artist was called Disney Titillations. And I did a one-woman show, which was me with 26 quick changes. And I transitioned of like, if the Disney princess was someone in real life, what would it actually look like and sound like? And like, you know, like Jasmine was a Long Island, you know, and...
I love that.
It was That's very wild, inappropriate show, which I would never perform now. But in my provocateur stages of my life, it was
you have to go through.
You really do have to go through your provocateur, your thirst trappy stages. I see you're still in yours, so let's get down to business with it.
I came to it aged, yes.
You're a late bloomer of thirst traps.
That's right.
And I really appreciate that. My elder millennial friend.
That's right.
So I'm here to talk about sex, specifically animal sex with you. And where do we even begin in the long repertoire you have of unpacking the curious nature of sex with animals? What's your favorites?
My favorites?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. That's a question you could come at a number of different ways. There's the ones where it's just sort of the zaniest, kookiest example. And I think for me, and I know we've talked a little bit about this before, I tend to love the ones where I worked in a a lab that studied siphonophores in college with a scientist named Casey Dunn. And siphonophores are a colonial cnidarian, I might be wrong. They might not be exactly jellyfish, but they're a colonial invertebrate that is in the water column. And the idea with colonial animals, which reproduce asexually by budding more of themselves off, siphonophores do that and they stay in a mobile chain that moves through the ocean. And so in a David Attenborough special that I watched once, he says they're kind of potentially eternal, this animal, because they are, as one end dies, the other is just making more of itself. And Casey Dunn one time said to me when we were talking about animal sex, he said, mammals actually have a really boring life cycle. It's a really boring life cycle. The way that other animals are having sex is much more compelling. And so one of the other ways I approach being interested in animal sex is, what are the systems that are super mind-blowing that we have a hard time even understanding because our entire sensory modality is oriented in this other way. So I've just been starting to dip a toe in the water of spider sex.
Oh my God. Let's get down with spider sex.
Well, I'm very new to it, so it'll be I'm sure there will be listeners who can fill us in more in the comments.
You're like a virgin of spider sex, is what I'm
Yes,
getting.
and I'm really a virgin of all this sex. So much of it is just me learning alongside people and just popping our knowledge cherries hand in hand. So with spiders, the way that they don't see well. They're having a very sound and vibrationally centered existence. And the males are much smaller than females, which creates all of these different challenges in having sex. So one of my recurring themes that I love from a kind of projected human feminist perspective is I love the animals where, like, he's got to get in and out before he gets eaten by the female, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So he's either bringing her a sperm package that's full of nutritious, he kind of secretes it from a gland near his anus or penis, but it's like he brings her a package. So with cockroach sex and a lot of other insect sex, she gets given a package. And this happens we call it dimorphism. So it's when the males and the females are very different sizes. So in spiders where the female, I think black widows function this way, where the female is much bigger. Sometimes the male brings her a package of food. He either brings her prey he's caught, or in cockroaches, they sort of secrete this stuff that I would not want to eat from a gland near their anus that she is really excited to chow down on. And essentially...
Is this like a dowry?
Yes, it's like a dowry, but it's a meal she can eat right away that it's extra nutrition for her because she's going to go through the exertion, right, of producing eggs, which is viewed by science as being more energetically costly. However, my understanding from the latest and greatest is that we don't actually have that much evidence for that, which is very exciting, but we'll come back to that. So he gives her this package. She's chowing down so that he can inseminate her from behind while she's busy eating. And he wants to get out of there before he then gets eaten. So I tend to be pretty tickled by that kind of sex.
He's distracting her with a dowry of
That's
sorts.
the idea.
So that he won't get eaten while they fornicate.
Yes.
And then he can scurry away.
Yep.
Unharmed and having done the deed.
Yeah, live to fuck another day.
Live to fuck another day.
Now, there are some species where he'll break off his dick inside her if he doesn't get away quickly enough to try to just take that appendage, but let me live. Or he'll give her a limb or something if she sort of turns on him and is hungry. But the other thing that fascinates me about spiders is that they are known to sometimes have heart attacks while they're having sex, because my understanding, and again, just dipping a toe in this water, is that their sperm are not as mobile and fast-paced as other animals' sperm is. So they are not moving into the female through the propulsion of the sperm. He has to kind of like rocket them into her with thrusting. And so what I read the other day is that some species, the males can frequently have heart attacks during the sex act because they're exerting themselves so rigorously. This is a real, I kind of took us in a real like, well, let me tell you, Scott, the sex I like, he doesn't stand a chance. But there's a lot of other versions I also enjoy.
First, I'm not analyzing you, so feel free to tell me all the type of sex you like, and I will just openly appreciate it. But let's talk about the other types of animal sex you enjoy. Is that the right phrasing there?
Yeah, the other types of animals. Exactly. Yeah, well, we're always sort of in a dance with this of what does it mean that we're all so interested in this? And I think it's just perfectly natural. And I think without taking it too literally, it's really just about a menu of options in the world. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That there's a lot of options for how we might pursue these relational acrobatics.
Yeah. Absolutely. I remember as a kid, my mom being obsessed with these turtles she saw having sex and the noises they were making. And she would retell the story over and over again at every party. And it occurred to me as a 7-year-old, I was like, I wonder if they talk about themselves having sex in the same way, with the same excitement, or would they like to observe other people having sex in the same way they enjoy talking about animal sex? I don't know, but animal sex is hot to trot.
Animal sex is hot to trot. Animal sex is happening. It's happening a lot. And it's happening, I think, for increasingly complex reasons that are not quite as different as we have wanted it to be than the reasons we have sex. So I tend to really like examples of animal sex that is not procreative, because I think it helps establish that these are exuberant, pleasure-seeking creatures that, besides the kind of eat food, reproduce, keep babies alive narratives that we've given them, it's a lot of work. I also think that they do things for joy and pleasure. And so I tend to like sex that animals are having that's not procreative.
I want to take a moment to give a loud shout out to the Embody Lab, which is one of the most incredible resources for body-based and somatic therapies. This show is all about healing, and the Embody Lab does exactly that. Whether you're on your own journey of transformation and discovery, or enhancing your skill sets in your career as like a coach or a therapist, a body worker, or really any career where you are supporting other gently used humans, the Embody Lab is your place for deep, inspiring, and impactful workshops, certificates, masterclasses, and an incredible community of like-minded folks. I love the Embody Lab, and so do so many other people that call it a platform to come home to over and over again. The Embody Lab is giving my listeners an exclusive offer, a one-time 10% off code to enhance your embodied well-being. All you have to do is go to theembodylab.com and use the code GentlyUse10 at checkout.
So I've been spending a lot of time in the book Queer Ducks by my friend Elliot Schrafer and talking to him recently. And it's a book called Queer Ducks and Other Animals. It's a YA nonfiction book that explores the sort of diversity of sex in the natural world. And we've been talking about examples of same-sex, non-procreative sex in mammals. So bonobos are known as sort of the female hippie species of primate. They tend to have a lot of sex. It's been viewed as a way to avoid conflict over resources. And Frans de Waal, who's a primatologist whose work you may be familiar with, is a great communicator and writer. And he has a line that I really love where he says that some scientists talking about animal sex are like a convention of bakers that has agreed to collectively not use the word bread. Why do we refuse to call it sex? So there's all these reasons people come up with for queer, pleasure-oriented animal sex. So the bonobos have sex 8 times a day. And it is likely that it is forming social alliances. It's a way for these sort of feminist bonobos to maintain their hierarchies. And they are getting off. They're getting off. So I love bonobo sex. I love male dolphin gay sex. Dolphin sex is a source of endless fascination for me, and they're my favorite animal. So
tell me more about this dolphin sex.
So when I was 18, after high school, I worked at a dolphin lab called the Dolphin Institute that is now no longer, but it was the research lab of a scientist named Dr. Lou Herman. And I don't know how much of the history of dolphin research you're familiar with, but I can give you a quick overview.
I am a virgin to dolphin sex.
Behave. So dolphin research, there's a long-standing human fascination with them for obvious reasons. And there was a guy named John C. Lilly who really advanced a lot of our cognitive understanding of them in the 60s and 70s. And then as he was getting more involved in acid experimentation, his work starts to like go off the rails with them, which is this whole other story we can get into. But his, I would say, kind of intellectual inheritor and carrier forward, really of deep work about how how dolphins experience the world, how dolphins navigate the world, dolphin communication, cognition, memory, capacity, was carried forward by a guy named Dr. Lou Herman. And I just kind of wound up at his lab after high school as an intern. And there were 3 dolphins that were living there. There was a male named Tiapo, there was an older female named Akekamai, and there was a female named Phoenix. And we, as little lab interns, we would go to the lab and you would do 24-hour observations on these dolphins. And as a caveat, I'll say, you know, I'm a lot more interested in dolphin research in the wild today. These are wide-ranging oceanic animals built for incredibly long migrations, and the size of tanks that they were in is not something I would recommend going forward. So, and not to mention the sensory stimulation and learning, but we would go and we would do nighttime observations, and dolphins are crepuscular / nocturnal, and they would just be going at it at night. I mean, it would be like, because dolphin sex is essentially this. That's about how long it takes. They have prehensile penises, so they have like thumb penises because it's 2 torpedoes trying to have sex with each other in the ocean. So you have to have a penis. You got to have some grip that can grab. So they have just a ton of foreplay. We used to do in obs. We had this amazing veterinarian, I forget her name, but she would call it a Ross Jenny. And that was her shorthand for the term was rostrum to genitals. So that's a dolphin will put its rostrum in the other dolphin's genitals and make these clicks and beeps. They basically, their oral sex is echolocating in each other's genitals. They do all manner of, there's a guy named Bruce Bagamill who wrote a book called Biological Exuberance in the 90s. Have you heard of his work?
No.
It's, to this day, the compendium of gay animal sex. It is the Bible, and he has I can't track him down. He's sort of gone away again, and it's not clear what his research affiliation was at the time, but he's such an icon to me. And there's these amazing line drawings in the book, and there's one where these dolphins are doing like a boner to blowhole situation between 2 males. So gay male dolphins, I've just been learning about from my friend Elliot. One of the major social organizations in bottlenose dolphins is these groupings of kind of gay male kingdoms, as Elliot calls them. And they are having sex with each other 2.38 times an hour. Oh, they're doing incredible feats. The genitals are the rostrum is in the other dolphin's genitals, and it's like pushing him up out of the water in these incredible acrobatic leaps. Like, the thing I love about dolphins is they're truly incredible athletes and gymnasts, and they don't hold back in their sex lives with those capacities either. So there's this kind of like, watch what I am capable of physically and eat your heart out while they're doing all of this.
Yeah.
So it's thought to be a sort of social cement and a social glue, these bonds between males. And then in the last couple of years, there's a scientist named Patricia Brennan who's been studying the clitoris for decades. And I believe, I don't know if she was on the team, I'm forgetting who led this piece of research, but there's new evidence that the dolphin female clitoris has more nerve endings than ours. So it is believed to be able to experience more sensation. And scientists, because they want to be careful and they want to be sort of putting forward the next advancement in the research and not drawing too many conclusions, all of the papers were like, it is possible that they experience pleasure in these areas. And it's like, okay, dolphins have whammo clits. Like, yeah, they do. But they also have labyrinth vaginas because, coercion, if you have these groups of male dolphins that are cruising the ocean, there's a fair amount of coercion and non-consensual stuff that happens. And so in
Oh,
multiple different
no.
animals. Yeah. So this is
I mean, that just ruined my innocent dolphin fantasy.
well,
That they're
and this is
just like
such a
all,
big. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
well, just like they're
Right.
all super nice and consensual.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not so. And I think grappling with, I get a lot of comments. There's a lot of stories I share that are right on the edge. And grappling with not only do we get to come in and celebrate these things we love about animals, also they reflect to us things that are painful to grapple with about what's happening in our own societies too.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think that's sort of interesting evolutionarily in these instances, and this happens with ducks too. So a lot of people, you know, at a cocktail party and they're like, well, what do you do? And it's like, okay, here we go. It's not like, I'm a doctor. I am a nurse. I mean, I would have a lot of follow-up questions for a doctor or nurse, and I'm sure those people get shown body parts and stuff that they don't want to deal with. But
We do.
with ducks, a similar thing happens where there's coercion, and both duck and dolphin vaginas are sort of labyrinth. There's these sort of trapdoors. There's these dead ends. Duck vaginas are famously like nooks and crannies, and you can get lost in there. Basically, it's their way of deciding if you and I have had sex I didn't want to have, I'm not going to let you inseminate me.
Wow.
Which is, of course, where we diverge from them mightily, because humans don't have that capacity, despite what you might hear Republican politicians saying. We cannot decide if we get pregnant from rape. But dolphins potentially have the capacity to shut it down if they had an engagement they didn't like.
Wow. That is some evolutionary realness.
Yeah.
Like, that is some development. Shit. Wow.
Yeah, there's this history in science writing of calling it the evolutionary arms race of genitalia. And I think as a feminist, I'm like, yeah, bring in your military metaphors, guys. Okay. But you do see this real conversation happening.
I mean, look, we're understanding the nature of nature. That is also part of being gently used human.
Yeah. And endless drama, I would say.
Endless drama.
Of nature and of being a human.
Oh my God. Speaking of, what would you say were like the top 3 most addicted to drama animals?
I have to say, by and large, there definitely are dramatic animals. So the first one that's coming up is the naked mole rat.
That would have been my first choice too.
Yeah, you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Tell me why you think so.
Because they're naked and they're moles and they're rats. But why would you choose them?
Have you ever seen a naked mole rat?
I
What
actually
they look
have,
like? Yeah, so it's a little bit distressing.
Yeah, it's very distressing.
And they're living their lives in these colonies. What I find dramatic about them is that they've taken, it's almost like seeing this mammal take the model of social insects, but apply it to mammals in this insane way so there's a naked mole rat queen, and she is in social insects. They pheromonally prevent. So there's a queen in a social insect colony, like your termites or your ants. And she is pheromonally controlling her worker females. They are not reproducing because she's the only one that is reproducing in the colony. It's her genetic line. They're all her daughters. It's her genetic line that's going forward. But she's controlling that chemically. And they've done research on naked mole rats, and I was reading about this in Lucy Cook's book, Bitch, which I highly recommend. It's called Bitch, and the subtitle is On the Female of the Species. It's a divine book. So my understanding, and again, I do want to flag, like, I make 1.5-minute long videos about all these animals because I have the attention span of a gnat. And basically, once the video is over, I make no commitment to maintain the information. So we'll see. We'll see if any of what I'm saying right now, I'm just coming on to spin myths for you and whatever. It's fun. So naked mole rats, the female suppresses the reproductive capacity of all of her workers. However, scientists believe it is actually because they have so much cortisol rolling through their bodies because of her reign of terror that they are not able to reproduce. They're just so busy trying to not get in trouble because a naked mole rat queen
Yeah.
I think moves around the colony like a number of multiple factors more than the other animals in the colony because she's bullying all day to keep her workers in check and to maintain her dominance. So she has a dominance that is not through chemicals she's releasing while she stays in her breeding chamber, although she makes tons of babies throughout her life. So not only is she cranking out young, she's also patrolling her colony all day, being like, you stay in line, you stay in line. They think that she is like shoving and nibbling and that that's how she maintains dominance. So to me, that's like a highly dramatic lifestyle.
That's some mommy dearest shit right there.
Exactly. That's really some mommy dearest shit. I think that antechinus are really dramatic in their sweet little way. So they are a marsupial that lives in Australia. Do you know
They're the ones that have
antechinus?
sex until they die, right?
They have sex until they die. So the way
Or
that
they
they
died having sex, whatever you want to say.
Right. Well, they actually die from sex because they become gangrenous and they fuck themselves to death. Exactly. So all of the females in a given region go into estrus at the same time. And all of the males stop producing sperm at basically 11 months old.
Whoa.
So they're in like a use it or lose it. They got to go shoot their shot. And it correlates with when the females go into estrus. So the males find them. And I've watched... So as an illustrator, watching video is better than than working from photographs. If I want to capture the animal in motion, if I want to get different angles on something, if I really want to work to tell a story. And I don't recommend YouTubing antechinus sex. Along the lines of the consent question, it's pretty athletic for these little guys, and it's pretty roly-poly. It's tough. It's rigorous. He literally does it till he dies. So it can't be like gentle lovemaking. So he is trying to shoot his shot with as many females as he can. And they have this 2-week orgy. And talk about cortisol running through his body. Immune system shuts down, gangrenous, fur falling off, drops dead at the end of that 2-week period. Every male in the area. And the females can live for 1 or 2 more years. And she gives birth to a litter that has multiple fathers after that from all of those copulations. So I would say they're pretty dramatic. And, again, back to dolphins, like they live in what scientists call fission fusion societies, which chimpanzees do also, which basically means, and I don't know if I've never heard it said about humans, but I assume we do too. It basically means the dynamics are constantly changing. So it's just this constant alliance forming, alliance breaking. I'm with them, they're with me. We're doing this, we're doing that. Like, these incredible photographs you see of dolphins hanging out with other kinds of whales and other kinds of dolphins. And it's like, I was doing research for this gay dolphin comic I did this week for my newsletter on Substack. As one does. I actually went on a date during it, and they were like, what have you been doing this morning? And I was like, working on a comic. And then I do get into it. I don't hide my life, but it's always just... Anyways, so I was looking up photos of dolphins, and I found this photo of a dolphin swimming with... It was a kind of small whale, and I'm forgetting what kind, but it's like the way that the photograph is taken, they're all swimming sort of, say, to stage left, but one of the whales is looking at us and one of the dolphins is looking at us, and there's just one dolphin in this pod of these small whales, and it's like, that dolphin came here to fuck. You know that. You can't deny that, science.
That dolphin's a playa.
Yes, there's an incredible Blue Planet episode that opens, and it's Blue Planet 2, just if you stan David Attenborough like I do and you're like a super fan, Blue Planet 2, not the first series, where they basically come upon a massive orgy. And listening to David Attenborough narrate it in this way that's like, we don't know what they're up to. We're not sure what's happening here. They've gathered for mysterious reasons. I really love. So I think dolphins are pretty high drama too.
Oh my God. I just am rolling in the idea of David narrating an orgy of any sorts. And that way, if we can make a compilation of all of the orgies he's narrated, that would just make my life.
Speaking of thirst traps, I have a Tumblr. I have a defunct Tumblr that was like Daddy Attenborough lying with animals, because when he was, bless him. I think he's like 95. And I don't know if you've listened recently to the appeals he's now making at all of the UN climate change conventions, but to watch him now, the appeals, it's so beautiful and so painful to watch this person who has spent his life with these animals calling and begging based on the changes he's seeing. And it's been powerful for me as someone that has watched his work my whole life in recent years be like, yeah, thanks for talking about climate change now. Like he really, I think he has felt no option but to shift to talking about it in the coverage they're doing. But I have a Tumblr that is just like, there was a time when he was more in the field where a lot of shots would pan over to like Daddy David Attenborough, like lying amongst the sea lions. There's so many photos of that man reclining among animals that I just love. So yeah, compilations to be made about him for sure.
I can't wait to see your Tumblr account.
Oh yeah, baby. It's
Get it.
not been updated in a minute, but
Please update that. David, the whole chronological timeline of his career would be great in there.
yeah, it's true.
So let's talk about cloacas.
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 Yeah.
Can you share with us some of your favorites?
My favorite cloacas.
Your favorite cloaca stories?
I think for me, it's more just about the fact that they exist, that a lot of animals are moving through the world with just one hole that gets it all done. And we've developed all of this sort of exhausting architecture that inside the womb, everything has to go just right for it to come out in a certain way, right? Because humans, at one point in our embryonic development, we also have cloacas, and we have evolved to have separations happen once we come out.
They call that the undifferentiated to differentiated in
Exactly,
embryology.
right. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. Yeah. So
You
I
said
love...
it much sexier than I did.
Well, that's just the nerdery. The dirty nerdery in me, baby.
Dirty nerdery. That should be... you got to get that as a hashtag. Dirty nerdery.
There's someone, I'm forgetting who, has a Talk Nerdy to Me, a podcaster show. I forget who it is, but yeah, it's a good title. So I just love a cloaca period because it's just kind of funny to watch, again, with the videos. I mean, if my computer was ever subpoenaed and they were like, let's look at these Google searches. I don't... It's like puffins having sex. This video of puffin sex. I mean, the work for the dolphins, because dolphins, there's a lot going on the internet about dolphins. You have to be careful. And so this week I was like, gay dolphins. Typing that into Google or gay dolphin sex, you have to really kind of... Anyways, so writ large, I just am here for cloacas. It's just a bop. That's literally how long bird sex lasts, and it gets the job done. I think a cloaca I admire is the platypus cloaca because they're mammals with cloacas and they're kind of out here just representing talk about elder millennials, the elder mammals, your monotremes. They don't need to do a whole lot else. They're getting the job done with that cloaca. And that's, really all there is to it. I'm trying to think of recent stories of cloacas that I've enjoyed.
It's just efficient.
It's just plain efficient.
It's just plain efficiency right there.
And there's something to me that's so honest about diarrhea from the place I'm also going to have sex with you with. It's just kind of animals don't hold back.
No.
Speaking of gayness.
No.
Any thoughts on that, Scott?
Yeah, let's go to that. You've named some of your favorite books, and some of my favorite books are in the same realm. I love Evolution's Rainbow by Joan, was it Roughgarden? Roughgarden, yeah.
Yeah.
Sexing the Body by I think our mutual favorite author, Anne, Fausto Sterling. Confronting what they refer to as created truths, where science is a social construction based on bias. And I think that's so apparent in when we start to really take off the filters of Darwin, so to speak, that we've been told, and start to see the actual diversity, and to shift from a idea of animals only procreate, or only's job is to procreate, versus like, oh my gosh, they also like pleasure. It's just such a radical disruption in the fundamentals of biology, of science, as we have been taught. And I want to kind of talk about that. It's not like we're going to get into some severe anti-Darwinistic shit here, but like disrupting science and disrupting the created truths that we might not even know were created.
Which is so exciting. It's really fun. It's a scary thing, and it's fun to be like, what needs rewriting?
I can say even one of my favorites. I was talking to my niece a couple of years ago, and she was in, I don't know, 4th grade or 5th grade science or something. And she was talking to me about what she was learning in school, and she was like, I learned that males are males because they have testosterone, and women are women because they have estrogen. And I was like, well, that's not right, honey. She goes, but that's what it says in the book. And I was like, well, your book's wrong. And I was like, according to Anne Fausto Sterling and other, pioneers in uncoupling bias and science, like we really understand, like in one of the wars, we discovered that cis men also produce estrogen, and that they hid it so as not to seem weak to the enemies whom they're at war with. And I was like trying to explain that to her. And like that sort of bias has continued as our fundamental understanding of science. And that's a created truth as opposed to the reality of the true reality of science. And there's so many of those.
Yeah, there really are. And it's, it's not a coincidence. Like, who was in the room when the stories got told the first time? Who was kept out of the room? I've not read the book by some dudes. I forget their names. Leviathan and the Air Pump. It came out maybe in the early aughts, and it's the story of kind of the first scientific experiment, which is this experiment that happens where this big air pump is being worked. And the real thing about that experiment is that the first scientific paper emerged from it, which was reviewed by colleagues. It was written, a record of what happened during the experiment was written down. It was reviewed by colleagues, and it kind of entered circulation. I think the Royal Society might have existed at that point. So it sort of gets taken up by the community, gets feedback. So this is establishing what an experiment is.
Yeah.
And Donna Haraway does this incredible writing about it when she's, talking about her theory of situated knowledges, that who makes the knowledge, and the gender, race, class experiences they've had shape how they see the world and the questions that they're going to ask. And she talks about how in the room when they were working that air pump, it's something that we all learned in school. I don't remember what they were doing. I don't care. They're working that air pump. Everybody's so pumped. They write down the first scientific paper, the record of what happened.
Yeah.
There were slaves working the pump who are not written down in the book. And there were women in the room whose names were not written down. And so Donna Haraway uses this example to basically be like, from this foundation, the way we've produced science has not told the whole truth about who is or isn't in the room, how they contributed or didn't, what their perspective was, or what questions they might have asked if they were given the chance. And so it, again, is this exciting moment in the production of science where we have so much improving to do still. And I think there's an additional set of folks in the room asking different questions. And there's people that were so lucky, have spent their careers really wanting to uncover the people quietly working away whose work has fallen into obscurity, who are poking holes and asking questions, or are doing that work today. So my friend Kaya Tombak, I think that the paper is out now, where she recently basically went back through a ton of data, also because we have more and better data today than we've ever had before. And she really re-examined Darwin's assumption that male mammals will be bigger than female mammals. Because his idea was the male mammals are competing to have sex, and so they're going to be bigger than female mammals. And his examples were the pinnipeds and carnivores and bison. And Kaya puts forward that if you keep studying bison and pinnipeds and carnivores, that idea will be right and true. But if you look at the broader diversity, right, in bats make up most of the diversity of mammal species. There's a ton of bat species. So if you're looking across mammal species and you take that data into consideration, bats and rodents make up most of mammal species, and they are not having male-male competition that centers on size in order to have sex with females. And many bat species are the same size across gender. And we're in the binary right now. But so she references the work that a woman scientist whose name I'm not going to remember produced in like 1979 that has just like not really been referenced, not really changed the game. It made an impact, but it's so cool to see scientists today being like, and also actually there's a precedent for poking these holes and asking these questions. And a new piece of work that Kaya is doing that I'm really excited about, per what you were saying before about definitions of gender, another one that comes up a lot is that sort of animal sex, right? So in nature, we're not sure what animals' genders are. We can't ask them. And Joan Roughgarden puts forward the idea that an animal's gender is how they perform their sexual role, and that there are a lot more genders in the animal world than we give credence to. But if we're sexing animals, quote unquote, and again, animals continue to push back on the idea that there's a binary in the sexes also, and we can talk about examples of that. One of the ways it's often done is who produces which gametes, who made the sperm in this scenario, and who made the egg.
Oh, that gets complex.
It gets super complex, and it's traded, and it's, right, there's different stuff going on. But the other thing that Kaya is doing that I'm so excited about is so much of Darwin's sexual selection theory and the scientists that have followed suit reinforcing Darwin's ideas. And again, to all the Darwin heads out there, hey, he did good work. Like, we agree. Great job on a lot of shit, my guy. It's just that it's time to update some stuff. And it's just that we now know that Darwin didn't include a lot of stuff he knew because he knew how controversial these ideas would be. So like, it's also even bringing in more of Darwin than he let be in some of these books, which we can talk about in a second. But basically, Kaya is starting to wonder this idea that Darwin has that making eggs is really energetically costly. So the females, their whole orientation to sex is around how much care they're going to put in their young and how costly it is to produce their eggs, which we see filtering out into our concepts of human women too. We're made for devotional care of our young, and we just repel the least unbearable. We have sex with the least unbearable man, right? It's really just about what's the least bad. And Kaya is like, I want to actually study what the energetic investment is in the gametes and really find out once and for all, is that so? And there's all this research scientists have been doing for the last 40 years that shows it's not just that females are having sex with the least worst animal. It's that their choices over millennia have shaped how those very animals are. They've shaped the frequency and kind of incantation of male frog noises. Like, frogs have come to be making sounds the way they do because female frogs liked it over millennia. They've shaped peacocks. Like, female choice has actually made the world in a lot of ways that we don't talk about with that lens on it. And I think those conversations are really exciting.
That's amazing. Isn't eggs, like in terms of gametes, they're already done by the time you were born? And so in terms of energy expenditure, there is no additional energy expenditure. It's already been done in utero.
That's right.
Okay.
I think so.
I mean, that's it. Yeah.
I mean, we got to get a real evolutionary biologist on here, but
that's what it said.
Right. You come out with what you've got.
You come out with what you got, whereas opposed to if you're developing sperm, it's a new continuous development cycle. Yeah.
Right.
This show is also brought to you by the absolutely stunning and powerful tools of transformation that are created by Omala. Oof, even the name Omala transports you to a place of flow and vitality. These are some of my favorite products ever. They have an amazing color-changing yoga mat that responds to your temperature and presence and reflects back your posture in real time. There's this incredible smelling skin balm candle that heats up to activate all the essential oils and vitamins that your skin has been craving. I mean, look, if I could live in a giant bath of this candle, I would 100% do it. They also have these journals that lead you into profound insight, and then you get to plant those journals to create a stunning flower garden. What? I mean, if that's not deep and inventive, I don't know what is. If you're someone who desires to live a luxurious flow of life and who believes in transformative wellness, then you have to check out Omala. Omala is giving my listeners an exclusive discount to treat yourself to something that is as special as you, boo. All you have to do is go to omala.com, that's OMALA.com, and use the code DrScott10 at checkout. And a portion of every purchase goes to an incredible charity. You got this. There's this thing about the fear of updating science, because so much of our construction of reality and our identities is based on old premises that perhaps are outdated. The same is about stress. Our conception of what stress is, which was first defined almost over 100 years ago, is not actually that accurate compared to what we now understand. But there's still sort of a rigidity and staying with like this very, very simple definition, and the idea that it's actually a bad thing, where it's actually our biological process of adaptation.
Right. And your body's doing such a good job.
And your body's rocking it.
Yeah.
Your body's rocking it. Celebrate it.
From the scientists I talked to, that's definitely still happening in the academy. A lot of resistance to updating. But I also, part of why I like sitting where I sit is I'm super fascinated by how these scientific ideas come into the culture and how the mainstream media reinforces some scientific narratives, but also then it kind of becomes these literally like the Richard Dawkins version of the meme, right? Which is a replicable small unit of something. They get memeified, and it's really difficult to shift the ideas about some of these things. And that's part of why I think the role of science communicator, science storyteller, how I would self-describe, can be really key, because it's, actually the science has been, sometimes the journal paper or the way that scientists have made conclusions needs updating. And also sometimes they've presented a lot of nuance if you read the paper.
Yeah.
But how it comes into headlines and the media can lose a lot of that nuance. So Frans de Waal talks about this idea that he talked about the concept of the alpha male in chimpanzees, and it has become a super incel-y concept, right? The alpha male, like in sort of business, and has been used in human culture.
We anthropomorphize it. Yeah.
Right. And now he talks about, oops, I didn't quite mean for that idea to move into those spaces in that way. And it's actually been updated now that I've done more research, and I would love to kind of take it back.
The same is true for the pecking order. Like in which the pecking order within birds that are more often, when they're captured, that they more create, and when they're free, and then we replicated these ideas or projected that back onto human structures, human social structures.
Right, and this was, when people say things to me when we're talking about animal sex, like, oh, don't dolphins rape, don't ducks rape. For me, that's a similar thing where it's like, yeah, and we should have a really slow, careful, thoughtful conversation about what we mean when we say that, and how we're naturalizing that, and what that does.
What else would you say to them in terms of that point? I'm so curious.
Yeah, so I will say that one of my books on my list is a book called, I think it's called Evolution, Gender, and Rape. So there was a paper about rape that came out in the early aughts. And as you have probably surmised on this podcast, name recall, not a strength, but a couple of guys made a paper, and they're great scientists. They made a paper or a book about rape in nature that a lot of feminist scientists were like, we have feedback. We have thoughts. We'd like to talk. Because it sort of put forward the kind of, the idea of rape as an evolutionary adaptation.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot more learning to do around this. I think today, and so a bunch of cool feminist scientists and science scholars put together their response called Evolution, Gender, and Rape. And it's like next on my list. I'm so excited to understand the ways that people that really spend time with animals took issue with that in the way that they're thinking about naturalizing rape or not. I think what I would say to a human that would say something like that to me is along those lines of like, you know, I think when we talk about it being only natural that animals rape, that has dangerous implications for humans. And because humans are different, because we are world builders, because we have changed the shape of the world as of today, because we have the capacity to alter our environments, to do all manner of things. It means that we get to have a really different set of conversations about what power and violence and patriarchy are doing in our communities and how we want to work to change it and keep people safe. So, and those sweet people are just like, oh, I learned that dolphins rape. You know, like 9 times out of 10, they're not coming at me in a conversation trying to sort of make it okay. But I think being careful about our word choice and also owning, like, I had a friend send me video from the aquarium. She took her toddler to the aquarium, and the belugas started having sex, which is one of my favorite things. That is a fun YouTube wormhole, is like aquarium videos where everybody's trying to have a family day at the aquarium and the animals are living their lives in captivity. And if you're a marine mammal who has sex multiple times an hour in a glass case, people will see it. So she sent me this video of it and was like, I felt really distressed at the aquarium today. I saw this happen. The female didn't want it. He kept pursuing her. I feel really upset. And I think it's just important I don't think humans, based on a pretty big sample size at this point of people responding to me on the internet when I talk about animal sex, I don't think it's real to be like, we can't anthropomorphize. I just don't think that's real. I just don't think that's human nature. I think we tell stories about ourselves based on what we see in the world, these animals that we relate to. We can do that thoughtfully and carefully, but we still do that. So I think it's important to own, I saw that, it distressed me. I learned this fact, it feels distressing. I learned this fact, it brings up painful memories. I'm going to talk to someone about that. Like I'm feeling triggered, right? Any of those things. Yeah. I think it's okay to own and hold that, and also to own that, like, those animals can't tell us what's happening when that happens. And so we're not sure. And we can own and name that it looks pretty violent and we're not quite sure what's going on.
Yeah. There's a bit of projecting that's likely happening. And I really appreciate that. If you're having feelings, if you're being triggered, turn it back to you. It's just the same in human interactions. It's like, tune back into what is present in your history, in your body in this moment, and stay with that. It is paramount, as opposed to depositing it all on something or someone else, where you disempower yourself in the process, because you can't move through something if you're projecting it all out at someone else or something else. So, as a aquatic aficionado of sorts, I'm curious. Do you know the leader of the orca militia, like the orca group that is attacking yachts? Like,
personally, am I in touch with them?
Yeah.
I'm not, but I've heard that their name is Gladys. Is that right? I think it's White Gladys they're calling
I think it is Gladys, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know Gladys?
Well, it's believed to be, we send letters. So it takes a long time.
Your pen pals, yeah.
Yeah. I wish that I knew Gladys personally.
I mean, that's an amazing story. And I also like how it's being captured in the news, and again, the projections and the narratives we are writing on behalf of the animals.
Yeah, the memes are just killing me. I saw one yesterday. I have spent a fair amount of time with the Harry Potter books and movies, and there was a meme that was like, this is J.K. Rowling's $29 million yacht. I don't know, some unbelievable yacht. And the person in the meme was like, orcas, do you know where it is? Do you want us to tell you? Like, do you want to find this boat? Yeah, I think it's really fun for people to see orcas fighting back, if that's what's happening. It seems to be a real unifying moment where people are excited to root on this underdog. And I just imagining, but also there's plenty of evidence that there are a lot of animals that can maintain memories, can maintain grudges, can take action on those grudges, have agency and individual choice making where they take actions to take care of themselves. I did see a meme that I thought was really powerful where someone was kind of saying, you know, when Black and Indigenous people destroy property, it's looting and rioting, but when orcas do it, it's righteous rebellion. So I do think the way we talk about these things and who we get behind is very much at play. And it's really fun.
Yeah.
Especially if the idea is that Gladys is in charge, because we do know that's how orca pods learn. They learn from the matriarch.
Yeah,
and she shows them what to do.
In orcas, is it that sometimes even when the matriarch dies, the males sometimes just get lost and starve to death?
Yeah, they can have a really hard time because they've been with her their whole lives, and yeah, there's a kind of social disruption that happens. And I was actually reading recently in the southern residents, I think people are worried, and this is happening with elephants too, that, you know, in elephants, the matriarchy is similar, where you have these 60 or 70-year-old matriarchs. They're sometimes orcas can get a little older, who hold a lot of knowledge and are really kind of holding together the group. And so when there's a loss of these matriarchs, this sort of social disruption that happens and waiting to see who's going to kind of rise as the next matriarch, I think can be very difficult for those animal communities. And there can be a lot of loss and kind of dispersing.
Wow. They're and the matriarch is the wisdom holders that remembers where the best fish is or something like that, right?
Yeah. First of all, so we see in different orca communities, the southern residents and the northern residents eat different prey. I think that's right. Or it's the residents eat different prey than other nearby orcas. I'm forgetting the distinction. A lot of orcas eat other mammals and the southern residents eat just salmon. So they're taught that in their communities by the matriarch, what we eat, where we eat it, historic fishing grounds, what areas are safe when to go where, when, a lot. They learn a lot.
Wow.
Elephant matriarchs, the older matriarch, can distinguish way more predator sounds than younger elephants can. So she's teaching them
how to discern. Wow.
But even to the tune of, is that a lioness that's alone? Is that a lioness that's with her cubs? Is that a male lion that's alone? Which is different levels of danger for the herd. She has that level of distinction that she conveys to them.
Wow, that's amazing.
You know, when we have these debates about animal culture, humans make books, humans make museums, humans make the Great Pyramids. Yes, so we make these artifacts of culture that we can see. But to me, a loss of knowledge when you lose seasoned individuals is a loss of culture, right? Transmitting information between generations in that way, to me, is culture. It just maybe doesn't manifest in ways that we're familiar with.
Yeah, well said. So I'd like to play a quick game with you.
Okay.
Which is, I'm going to make an animal sound, and then I'd like you to tell me your favorite fact about that animal.
Oh, God. Okay. This is like Newlyweds.
This is like a Newlywed Games. And if you need to call a friend, perhaps our mutual best friend, they can help you to identify the animal from the sound.
Okay, great.
And I did a lot of research to prepare for this.
Oh, my God.
So this is the first animal. Puffin! Puffin!
Oh. That's a really good impression. So the game is I tell you the first thing that comes to mind.
First thing that comes to mind or your favorite fact. Yeah.
One of the things I love about puffins is that they fledge their nest, I think, when they are, I don't remember how old they are. They're babies. Mm-hmm. And they spend 3 years at sea. A puffin is an 8-inch tall bird. They are a tiny seabird. And when they're babies, they take to the ocean and they bob around in the ocean like a cork ever turning into the wind for this sort of walkabout that they do before they return to the breeding ground where they were born to find a mate and mate for life.
Wait, are you saying they never touch the ground for those 2 or 3 years?
Yes, I am.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. And that's
tired?
Not totally unique among seabirds. They bob on the surface. Like albatross do a similar, they fledge and they come back at between 3 and 5 years, I think. And albatross barely touch the water in that time. They fly, though, in this way where they lock their wings in place, and they're geniuses at riding wind currents. They're incredible. So they expend the same amount of energy flying as they do on the nest, which is not a lot.
Wow.
Anyways, that's my favorite puffin fact.
Oof. All right, you ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is that?
Imagine that underwater, though.
Okay, there's a roar.
It's more like a neigh. Nah.
Oh, I see. Oh my God, I love that. Very good, very good. That's a seahorse. I guess that's a seahorse. A neigh was the giveaway.
Yeah. An underwater neigh. Here, I could drink water and neigh at the same time if you want.
Yeah, gurgle it.
Okay, ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's good. Okay, now I got a seahorse. It's gotta be.
There's
nothing else. There's nothing else. So, there's so much to love about seahorses. I will say this. Dr. Camilla Whittington studies the evolution of pregnancy in Australia. And one of the reasons she studies seahorses is that seahorses force the decoupling in our understanding of pregnancy away from the uterus. So a lot of talk about pregnancy can be very uterus and female animal centered for obvious reasons. There's 3 to 6 examples of male pregnancy. But the fact that male seahorses get pregnant and give birth to live young, and that their bodies go through very similar changes as all pregnant animals do, many female pregnant animals do, is this kind of, again, with the evolution as trickster and genius game player, evolution's, what about this example? Boom! Imploding all of the theories and the patterns that you want to put down on paper, like, I give you male seahorses to just defy it. Mm. That's why I love them.
They're like ground zero of exploding our minds of diversity.
Exactly. And they're part of the there's anti-critical race theory parents groups that don't want seahorses being taught in some communities because they're too gender bending.
That's really intense. And may we all learn seahorse knowledge and wisdom.
May we all get to learn it, yeah.
May we all get to. Let's do one more.
Okay. Okay. That's really good. That might be a squid?
Close. It's definitely underwater again.
Okay. Is it blowing bubbles?
Yes, but out of a different orifice than the one I'm using.
So out of a butthole?
Yeah, out of a butthole. This is a butthole sound, if that helps you narrow in.
Okay. Is it a sea cucumber?
It is a sea cucumber.
That's very good. Oh my God, so much goes on with that sweet butthole.
So much. Tell us about that butthole.
Well, my understanding is that through their buttholes, sea cucumbers breathe. Mm-hmm. And they pump in and out water. Mm-hmm. And they pull the water over their respiratory tree, a lung-like structure. And I don't remember if it's out of their butthole that their feeding tentacles come out also. But they harbor a fish called pearlfish in their buttholes also. And sea cucumbers are filled with chemicals. They're quite toxic if they want to be. So one of the ways that they fight off predators as a last-ditch effort is they will just and I made this when I was taking an animation class once, everybody else was like, oh, my characters are going on a walk. And I was like, I'm doing a sea cucumber tentacle anus. And the teacher was like, sure. And I was so proud of like doing the spray that they do. Basically, when a sea cucumber is super threatened, they flip their internal organs inside out. And it is like a spray of these white, like their innards that are toxic that they try to fend off the predator with. So that was my final project in animation class. As an adult, but also, so these pearlfish are covered in mucus. So they are immune to these incredibly toxic chemicals that sea cucumbers have inside their bodies to protect them from predators. And a little pearlfish will kind of take up inside a sea cucumber anus and live out their sweet little lives, bopping in and out. And they ride the currents in. Like a sea cucumber can try to stop them by closing up its butthole, but it has to breathe eventually. And the pearlfish is like, I know you're going to run out of air, you asshole, literally. So when it starts pumping again, it accidentally sucks in a pearlfish. But I was reading a piece, my friend Ed Young, years ago in National Geographic was reporting on this incident where they found 14 or 15 pearlfish inside one sea cucumber's butthole. And
that's a greedy butthole.
It's a greedy butthole or an especially cooperative group of pearlfish. It's unclear.
Unclear.
Talk about greedy buttholes. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. Well, one final question before we send you on your hula hooping jazzercise way.
Thank you.
What are some things that we should just know? Like, as gently used humans, what can we learn from the gently used animals in the world?
So many things. One thing that comes up for me is it doesn't seem animals judge each other for their sexual choices. In examples where animals defy rules that we've tried to lay down, even in our study of them, where monogamous albatrosses, turns out a third of that breeding colony is female-female pairs. Oops, these termites form lifelong male-male bonds. Oh, emperor penguin males are having a lot of sex with each other. Male dolphins are doing it, right? All these examples. There's not been a documented incident that I'm aware of, and I'm balls deep in the literature, my friends, where animals doing that were rejected by their communities, judged by their communities, gossiped about in their communities. So that's one thing we can learn from them, is that they are witnessing each other making sexual choices out in the wide open, and they don't appear to have comment on what the other animals are doing. And this is something that, again, Elliot Schrafer writes about really beautifully. For me, it's just such a diverse menu of really kinky options and really perfectly natural options. So there are species that change gender as a matter of custom or maturation in their lives. There's animals that, are cannibalizing each other after they have sex. I'm not recommending that on the Gently Used Human podcast, but I want you to know it's happening right under your nose. They push back on when we try to ascribe like monogamy or feminism or any of the kind of things we'd like to see them represent. They keep breaking the rules. And so that for me is such a gently used human lesson of like, anything we see that we think we can name, it's probably a lot more complicated under the surface, and it's probably not exactly what we think it is, and it warrants further investigation and an open-minded inquiry.
I love that. I am walking away as a better gently used human because of you and because of all the animal kingdom.
Animal queendom in this family, Scott.
Oh my God, thank you.
Right?
Is there even like another way of saying that? No. How about animal dim?
Animal dim. The animal dim.
Animal dim. Animal dim.
I love it.
Again, we have revolutionized.
There's a lot of options. There's a lot of options.
You're welcome, world. Thank you so much for being on the Gently Used Human. We love you here. We love everything that you do and the stories you are telling and educating and bringing wisdom into the world. And where can people find more of you?
I'm on Instagram as @experiment, EXPERRINMENT. I have a Thirsty Science Substack, and my website is www.experiment.com.
Love it. I love it. So go check out all those amazing thirst traps.
Indeed.
The hula hooping. Also, if you just want to learn how to hula hoop, I reinvigorated my hula hoop passion through watching your videos.
Have you been doing it?
I have, yeah. I have my hula hoop here. I wanted to do a little hula hoop extravaganza with you, but I realized it's hard to do that on a podcast. So
it's hard to do that on a podcast.
I'm gonna come over on Friday.
Perfect.
And we're just gonna hula hoop on the streets.
Perfect. Can't wait.
Can't wait.
Thank you for
so
having
much,
me.
love.
It's such a joy.
Such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Gently Used Human podcast with Dr. Scott Lyons and friends. Visit gentlyused.com for fun extras, including submitting your questions for advice from a Midwestern mom. And don't forget to spill the tea and gossip about the show with all your friends and frenemies. And you know what? Show us some love by giving us 5 stars and leaving a review in your favorite apps. This helps us connect with all the other gently used humans out there. Oh, and by the way, you look fierce today.